I'm Julie Rocheleau, illustrator of Traverser l'autoroute, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Julie Rocheleau about Traverser l'autoroute and more at the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Julie is a Montreal-based cartoonist. She collaborates with talented writers to make comics for adults and the general public, exploring a variety of themes and universes, such as a dark and wild detective adventures in The Wrath of Fantômas, a wordless story about body image, self-esteem, and resilience in the face of illness in About Betty's Boob, an adaptation of classic Quebec literature in La Petite Patrie, and much more. Her works have been noticed and rewarded in Canada, the United States, and Europe. She also produces fanzines, art prints, and trivial knowledge about birds and tap dance. While at MCAF, among her other books, Julie will be showcasing Traverser l'autoroute, or Crossing the Freeway, written by Belgian-Quebecoise novelist Sophie Bienvenue, and published by La Pastique. The story is described as a pathetic yet very touching and sometimes funny story of a father and son who can't or won't relate to each other. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Julie Rocheleau about Traverser l'autoroute and more at the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. So, Julie Rocheleau, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you for chatting with me.
I appreciate your time. This is great. So, Julie, before we get started, want to find out what's on your bedside reading table. What are you reading today?
There's a big pile of books with a lot of different things in there. There's some comics by Vian, a bit of a novel, French novels, some essays about the environment. I'm not reading all of it at the same time, but it's I like to have many things going on.
Yeah. The trouble, I guess, is finding time to read it with all the work that's going on, I suppose.
Yeah, usually I read very early in the morning or late at night.
Oh, it's good. Good that you have something to get to, that's for sure. It's a bit of a diversion. So we're chatting because you're going to be an exhibitor at the Montreal Comic Arts Festival this year. So with that in mind, do you have any favorite past convention or festival moments that you can share?
At this festival, I remember this festival is outside. It was in the park. And so you have all the people out there. They all have this big smile on their faces because you're in the park, you're picnicking, you're with your kids, you're with your friends. It's sunny outside. Even if it is raining, there's a sense of community there. And I was there, just attending my table. And there's this brass band starting to play. And everybody just looking around and starting, swaying a little bit. There was a kind of a party vibe going on while we are working. It's not like some other book fair you go and it's really just lines and a lot of work. And of course, you're happy to see the people. But there was really more of it was easier to exchange and have fun with everyone because of this very sunny and festive vibe.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. That's for sure. Do you recollect meeting with any fellow artists, creators, anyone you looked up to at these festivals? Anyone in particular?
Yeah, but I'm terrible with names. But I'm a fan of this nice guy who does False Knees. It's mostly about birds, and it's hilarious, and the art is exquisite. I love it. Of course, I like to see all of my fellow Montrealers. Axel Lenoir, Jimmy Beaulieu, Zvian. I don't know. There's always somebody you haven't seen in a few years, and you just want to catch up. And always new artists to meet. But after 2 years, I must say I kind of lost touch, and I'm looking forward to see more people again in exchange and
absolutely
to remember the names this time.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a special occasion because, as
Yeah.
you said, we've been out of touch with everyone for a
Hmm.
number of years now because of the pandemic. But this will be a great opportunity to get out and rub shoulders, as they say, and
Yeah.
touch base. That's good. So you'll be showcasing some work at the festival. I wonder if you could talk a wee bit about what will be on your table.
Well, this year's I only took a half table. I have one book that was not showcased yet at this festival, but it's not exactly new. It came out in 2020. So I'll have a few copies of that. I'll have, of course, my older books like Fantomas and about Betty's Boob, both in French and English. I'll have a few zines. I made many zines in the last few years, I guess. Like just a lot of people just went and took this time to experiment a little. I'll have some prints, of course, and a small compilation of short stories, published and unpublished, that I'm doing just for this event, just so I'll have something really new on my table, but also for the sheer fun of it. It's a bunch of mixed match weird stories and a photo roman. How do you say that in English?
A photo album?
Yeah, but it's like a comic, but with photos instead.
Ah, right. Yes, I have seen that. Very intriguing. Now,
Photo novellas.
yes. Yeah, very good. Now, you mentioned a book that you put out previously that you'll have at the show that hasn't been sort of in the public. Which book is that?
It's Traverser l'autoroute, written by Sophie Bienvenue. It has been in the bookstores and everything, but we didn't do any event around it really because it came out in February 2020, and of course it got forgotten right away. And I didn't have the chance yet to talk about it or to show it in any event really. So I'll have
can you give us a brief sort of hint of what the synopsis is for the book?
Yeah, it's very different of what I did earlier, which was a bit more adventure-y or slapsticky. This one is a father and son relationship who's not going so well, and they're trying to talk to each other, but they don't. It's kind of the classic clash of the generation story, but with a lot of humor and sincerity. It's kind of more of a small space, intimate kind of a story this time. It came out in La Pastèque, written by novelist Sophie Bienvenue.
I want to switch gears a wee bit, and I'm wondering if you could talk about the tools used to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through your workflow.
Depending on the book, my tool of choices are ink and old school, quill that you dip in the ink bottle. Pencil, of course. Sometimes I use more and more computer to do the line art, but I do prefer, if time permits, to use real ink and get my hands dirty and scratching the paper and everything. And then I do the color almost all the time simply in Photoshop with multiple layers, just because it goes way faster and you can change your mind a million times, which I do. And that's basically it.
Wow.
Sometimes I will, for special project, use like markers and color ink, but that's really something I do for myself when I do have the time.
How do you know when you're finished with something? Is it just like, okay, that's it? Because as you said, you could go back through the computer and be doing multiple revisions. Like, how do you know when to say, that's it?
Well, the deadline, I guess.
Okay.
You have to let it go.
Sure.
But of course, the thing is, the deadline, you can always push it back. But at one point, you need to finish your project before you get fed up with it, because then you don't have any fun anymore, and it will show on the pages. It will show in the energy, in the drawings, and the text. Yeah, if I am not happy with something, I just put it aside, continue elsewhere, and when I do go back to this thing I put aside, maybe it was the drawing at deadline, maybe it was the color, I see with new eyes, and sometimes I think, well, it is finished, and I don't need to add anything. But you need some space, some distance.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, you've talked about a few of your projects, and you're going to have some new materials at your table. Wondering, though, do you have any other up-and-coming projects that you can talk about?
Well, I'm currently working on a project actually, I started that right after the other book, so in 2020. It's been 2 years, and we're still counting. It's a big one. It's a big project with a lot of research. It's Nellie Bly's World Tour. Nellie Bly was a very famous reporter from back in the 1880 something. She did many great things in her life. We are telling the story of when she was the first woman to go around the world as a publicity stunt for the New York World, which was the newspaper she was working for. And a lot of things to be said about this. I'm working with Julien Volage, whom is an American scriptwriter and cartoonist. He lives in New York. It will come out in French, probably in a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I'm working in English with him, and then it will be translated in French and then back to English. It's a bit weird of a process, but that's how it goes. And that's what it's taking most of my time right now. I'm trying to do other little things for myself around it, mostly birds and nature related.
Nice.
That's the big project.
Sure. Well, I can appreciate, doing something of this nature can take a long time because you're illustrating scenes and people that don't exist today. So you have to do a lot of research, I suppose, to get it as authentic as possible. Is that true?
Yeah, I do take a lot of liberties because it's not only a period piece. I mean, she goes around the world. We see all of those countries. Some countries don't even exist anymore. And like I said, a lot of research, but ethically, she goes around quite easily because of the British Empire. We have to address that somehow. In her book, she was a lady of her time. If she was living today, it would be a different story completely. But she doesn't address a lot of issues that are obvious to most people today. Hopefully they are. So a lot of other research for that and how to stay true to the character, but still not taking for granted whatever she could have felt or what she saw when she was doing this. And just if we go back to the research thing, all the vehicles, the boat, the ships, the coaches, a lot of animals. I have to draw a lot of animals actually.
Oh, wow!
It's just so much research, which is great. I'm learning a lot, but at the same time, I'm just one person. And luckily, my style in this case it goes back to something a little bit more cartoonish, and I do take a liberty to add. And the scenarist Julien is totally on board with that. We exchange about it, and we actually have a lot of fun. So yeah, there's some shortcuts we will do historically just to avoid having too many characters, for example. And sometime I will put in some kind of editorial illustration instead of an actual scene. So it's more of a metaphor with a bit of humor to explain the situation. Don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a big project, that's for sure. Yeah. It will take some time, but I'm sure it'll be worth it in the end when it's all done. That's for sure. So we're talking about the Montreal Comic Arts Festival where you'll be exhibiting, but I'm wondering, do you have any plans to attend any other events this year?
For the moment, I'm mostly focused on my book, but I will go at the end, mid-end of August. At the end of the summer, I will be at the Prévost Comic Festival in the Laurentides, so a bit further from Montreal. And of course, exposing in the fall, the Independent Book Fair, which is always a lot of fun. Other than that, I was invited to go to France, but I declined because I don't have anything new to show for them, and I really must focus on this book.
Right.
So I can travel again.
Yeah, it sounds like you're busy, that's for sure. So with that in mind, do you have a website and social media that you recommend people go to find out about your current and your future projects?
The easiest way to find me is to go to my official website, which is Rocheleau, JROCHELEAU.com. And from there, you'll find my Instagram, my Etsy store, my Facebook, all of this stuff if you want to follow me on one of these platforms. But yeah, just type my name in Google. Luckily for me, there's no other artist name like that. Just some Olympic runner back in the 80s. Other than that, I'm the only one that pops up.
Very good. Well, Julie, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I don't know. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm always full of questions. Right now, I just want to have more coffee.
Okay, well, there you go. What is your favorite coffee? How about that?
Oh, just whatever juice I can find in the morning. I'm not a big coffee drinker, actually. Oh. in the morning, I need at least 2 cups. I do it with a French press. When you go hiking or camping, you want to have your little Italian coffee maker. I don't know anything about if a barista was to come talk to me, he would be very depressed.
But you could manage a cup of coffee, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Thanks to Julie for the chat. You can discover more about Julie on Instagram at Julie Rocheleau and online at jrocheleau.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.